Hey, it's John, and welcome to the interview. Today, I'm joined by David Wood, who is a former consultant to Fortune 100 companies like Sony, Chanel, and Exxon. He left his cushy Park Avenue job 20 years ago to start building one of the largest coaching businesses. He's become number one on Google for life coaching, serving an audience of over 150,000 coaches and coaching thousands of hours in 12 countries around the globe. So he's done a lot of coaching, worked with a lot of high-level people. He's also the author of Get Paid for Who You Are, with a foreword by Jack Canfield. He coaches high-performing entrepreneurs, executives, and teams to create amazing results and deep connection, one tough conversation at a time. Today, we're going to be discussing his background as a coach and entrepreneur, why having tough conversations in life and business are the key to growth, and what David has in store for the future. David, thanks so much for swinging by today.
Thanks, John. I'm excited to see what we're going to say.
Let's have a conversation, maybe a tough conversation. We'll see.
I hope we do. I really do.
Absolutely. Well, give the listeners a little bit of your background. I know people who haven't heard of you or haven't heard your story would be interested in kind of knowing who you are as a person. So give us the Reader's Digest version of the life of David up to this point, and what you heard about success and life and money and all that kind of stuff growing up, just to kind of fill people in on your background.
Sure. Well, I feel like I started life as a consulting actuary. So I was great at math, so I dived into what I was good at and what paid the best. And for people who don't know, actuaries are involved in long-term financial projections, like 100 years. They do complicated statistics and probability. And we would calculate insurance premiums and pension fund premiums and stuff like that. And, I had this great job. I'm on Park Avenue. I'm getting flown business class to, at the age of 25, I'm getting flown to Switzerland business class. And that was great, but I was missing something. And I didn't know what I was missing until I did a personal growth course. And what I found out later in life was that a tragedy I had when I was 7 years old had really impacted my life, and I didn't even know it. When I was 7, my little sister was killed in a traffic accident, and I watched it happen. I was there. Now, all I knew was like, all right, she was here one day, she's gone the next. No big deal, you move on with your life. What I didn't know is that I hadn't grieved properly, and I'd shut down my emotions. To save myself and to protect myself, I just learned to shut down my emotions and not feel. So I became top of my school, became a successful actuary. I'm really good with the left brain stuff and systems and making things happen in time and space. But what I found as I got older was I was missing the emotional component. I was missing emotional intelligence. I was missing how to connect deeply with another human being and how to be really vulnerable. And so fortunately, I quit my cushy job at the age of 27, and I've spent the last 20 to 25 years exploring some of the edgy stuff in life, exploring the tough conversations. I've had conversations some people couldn't imagine having, and I've done my own personal growth, and along the way, in parallel, has been my coaching business. You don't want to hire a coach who hasn't done their own work, really. Right. So the last 20 years have been about me having almost all the tough conversations that I could find with other people and with myself. And then I've been privileged to be able to do that with other people for 20 years and coach them on how to have their business be better. Yes, I love that. I can't stop raving about business, but you can find lots of coaches just for that. I want people who want not just their business, but they want their life to be better. They want to grow as a leader, as a parent, as a partner, and they want to have zero regrets when they're on their deathbed.
All right. So was this kind of the moment that you felt like when you saw your sister pass away, or was that like a moment that you decided to do deeper work and go into this field of coaching more in-depthly?
No, not at all. And I wish I could say it happened in a moment, because we like to think that things happen as epiphanies. I think sometimes our moments come over 2 to 10 years that we're realizing. That's the way it's often occurred for me. So with, it was when I was 26 and I went to this personal growth course, and I found that there were people who actually cared about others and devoted their life to other people opening up and feeling more of their heart and being more of a contribution in the world, maybe leaving a legacy. And I was like, wow, I cracked my cynicism open. And then I found that I was coaching people in the course. Oh, I just realized that. I was cynical about other people, but I didn't put it together with I was helping other people. So it's funny, I thought no one else would, but here I am. And I changed somebody's life overnight by coaching them in the course. And so I trained as a coach, but I still didn't know I could do it for a living until I went back to Australia and I started pursuing some other things. I wanted to be in a one-man band. So I became an entertainer for 6 months, even being on the National Gong Show in Australia. And then I met someone who was getting paid to coach. And I thought, that's amazing. I could change people's lives and get paid for it. That seems like something I'd want to do. And even then, it took another year for me to finally print off a business card and put it in my pocket and find my first practice client and get started in the field of coaching.
Yeah, it sounds like that course then was sort of the impetus then for you to kind of start down that road maybe, or something like that. And then it's through.
Oh, the course was huge. Yeah. And I'll give a plug for Landmark Education. Go and get yourself in the Landmark Forum.
Yeah.
It's very hard to lose by doing that.
Yeah, I've been through a couple of those too. So, yep, good stuff.
Oh, right on.
Yep. Very good. So you've coached all these amazing people and executives and people all over the world.
And prison inmates now.
Prison inmates I even saw. So you're doing a lot of amazing work. How did you step into your own playing real philosophy? Because, I mean, could be a lot of people, like you say, who get in their own heads or like, who am I to do this kind of work? Who am I to work with these kind of people? Do you have any comments to say on that? Like, how were you able to bring yourself to the point that you are now?
So I think the question is, how did I step into it and decide that maybe even that I was enough to do this? Initially it was pretty scary, as are most new ventures. So I think one thing that I have that some people may have less of is my willingness to be uncomfortable, my willingness to lean into and be with discomfort. So I got this first client and I didn't know what to do for the first session. So I hired another coach who wanted a practice client, paid him something very little, and I get my first session with him and I take notes, and then I go and do my first session with her. And then she said, well, what do we do next week? I said, wait and see, because I didn't know. I didn't know what we did in a second session. So I'd have to wait until my second session with him, and then I do my second session with her. And this is a pattern in my life that, like, if someone asks for a volunteer and no one knows what the exercise is, I'll often just jump in. I'm teaching I've taught courses that I haven't taken myself because I tend to just trust that it's going to work. Now, that was initially very scary to do coaching. Now that I've done thousands of sessions, it's rarely scary anymore, because I find that place of humility and listening, and I'm just really interested in, like, what can we do together? What's going to happen? And maybe I don't know the answer. Maybe they do, or maybe we come up with a research project so that they can find it. I'm just available, and I can't control how it's going to go.
Right. Yeah, it's the old saying, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And being okay looking foolish, I think you're right, because I think we're so scared of criticism from other people that we're afraid to look foolish when we're starting something. And the faster you can kind of look foolish and get past that point and learn in the trenches, the better you're going to get faster, right? So you have that skill down.
This is huge. Yeah. So, for our listeners, just think about, like, if you were to rate yourself from 1 to 10, 10 is totally willing to look foolish, if you're willing to start the violin and play badly for 2 years because you want to get better. You're willing to go through that hump or that dip. Or would you give yourself a 4 out of 10? That you just like to be really good at stuff and you don't like to look bad at something. And what would your life be like if you were willing to up that score? And this, as we get into talking about tough conversations, this is going to be relevant because you've got to be willing to feel uncomfortable. You got to be willing to not know exactly how it's going to go and be vulnerable and actually partner with the other person. You can't control it and you can't look great all the time.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll dig into that in a moment. And that's a perfect segue into that topic. So you talk a lot about playing for real and having tough conversations. Let's just kind of define those terms for people listening so that they understand what you mean when we talk about that. And then we'll dig into some examples. Yeah. So, branding's an amazing thing when you've got to work out what's your message in the world. Because really my message is I want your life to be amazing and I want you to be really happy. That's my message, but it's hard to sell that. So I looked at all my values and I found my values were truth, daring, and caring. I nosebleed truth. The things I've shared with people, I as a practice, because I believe as a spiritual practice, this is important for growth and confidence and self-love and connection is truth. And then that takes daring. And I've leaned into my fears all of my life. So I'm like, all right, I got truth, daring, and caring is important because deep connection, I think, is what the game is all about. Ultimately, if we don't have deep connection with people, I don't think we have anything. So these are my values. And I'm like, but what do I call this thing? And then I was having a call with Yannick Silva. Actually, Yannick Silva was coaching me. And we're trying to work out what it's called. And I was like, Get Real is something I really love, and I created an app. And I said, but I love play. I really believe life is a game. We're playing the ultimate game there is, so I want people to have more play in life. And I think I was about to hang up the call when he said, unless it's play for real. Yeah, that clicked.
The penny dropped. And I'm like, oh my God, I want us all to not take life too seriously and realize that it's all a game with very high stakes, admittedly. So, and when we can take it as a game, then we can be more in a flow state. But let's not be frivolous about it. Let's not squander life, because I don't know if reincarnation is true. I don't know if I'll get 20 more lives. What if this is the only one I get? So I want to play the game, but I want to play for real, as if it matters. So that's how I came to that. And then the tough conversations, that was a moment. So there was a moment. And this happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've been complaining about my brand because I love play for real and truth, daring, caring. But it's kind of vague. It's basically back to I want your life and business to be better. Mm-hmm. And I said to my coach, I want to pick a lane, but I don't know what it would be. And then instantly I said, yes, I do. I've been passionate about tough conversations and I've been having them all my life and role-playing them with my clients all my life. I would love it to be that, but I don't know how to sell it. I don't know if that's marketable in the industry. And then we did some back and forth and realized, well, hang on, people really, really do need to be better at their tough conversations and to lean into them and grow their leadership skills and transform their team, increase engagement, reduce conflict. Like all of these are tough conversations. And then I'm like, that's it.
Yeah. That's
it for me. So I've spent the last 2.5 weeks doing almost nothing but rebranding like crazy. You've never seen anything like it. It's just flowing through me. Tough conversations. That's how I got there. I say tough conversations are our doorway to growth, success, and true connection.
Right. No, it's well said. And yeah, there's certainly a market for that. I think, obviously selling the outcomes of what having tough conversations get people in business and in life is important. And One of my favorite books is actually a book called Crucial Conversations. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but
I know about it. Yeah. I don't think I've read it.
Crucial Conversations was a good book. It gives you a good framework for how to deal with difficult conversations. And I think sounds like, there's something may align with that, with what you're doing now for people. So that sounds like there is obviously an interest in that topic out there for people. So anyway, so what are how can some leaders, like, let's just kind of start with tough conversations then, since that's where you want to focus, and how can leaders of companies be more real and be willing to have more tough conversations with their teams?
Yeah. Well, step one is to identify the hidden tough conversation opportunities, HTCOs, because the mind won't often present them to us. The mind will present them as problems. Oh, that guy's a dick. Or I didn't feel good about how she spoke to me in that meeting. Or, boy, my staff member really needs to shape up, or I might have to fire him. So the first step, and here's an audit that anybody can do, really simple exercise: grab a piece of paper and a pen and write down anybody. We'll start with work in your business, anybody where you don't feel 100% great with. Like, oh yeah, we're totally on fire together. There might be something that disappointed you, some behavior you want to change, who knows, but write down the names of whoever comes to mind. It shouldn't be that hard. And then if you want, go and do that with your life too. And then next to that, write down the problem. The mind is good at presenting us with problems. Mm-hmm. So start with what's the problem, and then write down next to that what the conversation could look like. Like, what if I did have that conversation? I'm not committing it to it yet, because again, these are tough for a reason. But if I did have it, it might be, okay, talking to Bill about his BO, or talking to that customer about them dumping us and finding out what that was about. Like, whatever it is, just those things you've been putting off or even sweeping under the carpet, not even considering were possible. That's step one. And then step two is to write down your hope or intention for that conversation. Like, this is important, because this is why would I even bother? And if you can't come up with a good reason, like, I want our working relationship to be better, or I want the team to be functioning better, or I want them to be happier in their job.
Right.
Or I want to clear the air so that I sleep better at night. Whatever it is, come up with a good reason to have the conversation and a hope. And then there are more steps, but I'll stop there in case there's something else you want to say.
Sure, absolutely. So it sounds like just kind of like being intentional, right, with who of who you want to connect with, and then looking at the outcomes of cleaning that kind of thing up, right? Or kind of, in essence, that's what you mean by that then?
Yeah, and that's how you can get yourself, this is the beginning of the way to coax yourself into having the conversation, because initially it just seems to the conscious or the subconscious as, that's just going to be horrible. Right. They might get defensive, they might get angry, they might start attacking me, they might call me too sensitive, all these things are going on, so we sweep it under the carpet. If we can come up with a hope or an intention, that does a number of things. One, it's starting to enroll me in wanting to have the conversation. And then two, you can use that to enroll the other person in the conversation. We haven't gotten to the steps to having the conversation, but this is just the prep.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the specifics in a sec here, but what are some of the typical conversations that people tend to avoid? I mean, you mentioned a few of these with employees, but let's say in life and business, like, just what's a good list of, maybe just mentioning these will make people aware of them?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm bringing up my top 10 right now. I need you to improve performance. That's one. I don't like how you do that. Something you do bugs me. It could be harassment at work. It could be, I feel put down when you say that. Or when you start with what's wrong about my work, I feel demotivated, and I wonder if you'd be willing to start with something positive. You've got BO, or talking to a customer about something that doesn't seem to be working well, like maybe they seem upset about something. Having someone upset with you. How do you handle when someone's angry? They've got charged, they've got upset, or they're being passive aggressive. These are some examples in the corporate setting.
What about in life, like general speaking, personal life?
Yeah, that's a good one too. Let me bring that one up too. Well, there's relationships. So and let me see what I've got. I've got a romantic partner list, and then I've got some social. So romantic partner. Oh, and this works for work too. Handling a no. What do you do when you ask for something and you get a no? Or what about when you need to say no? You can have in a romantic partnership. What about I want more sex, or I want something specific sexually, or I don't want more sex. What about in socially and in work? I'm worried that I'm not enough. I'm worried that I'm not up to this. Oh, and here's a really good one. I have a confession. Like, I screwed up. Again, socially or in work, I screwed up. And I'm embarrassed about it. Or what about, I feel like you screwed up and I want you to take responsibility for it. Yeah. And another good one is, I broke an agreement and I want an apology.
Those are some good ones for sure. Business, life, good blend there, good list.
Yeah, so and you can get more on the website. If you go to playforreal.life, there's a top 10 list there.
Playforreal.life. Yeah, and we'll link that up here below this video and all those kind of things too. So now that we have a list for people to consider in their minds, maybe we sparked a few neurons here during that list.
You got to spark it. Otherwise the mind's like, what conversation?
Bring some awareness to what types of conversations. I think on your website you mentioned that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to have some of these tough conversations and you don't have the skill set to do that, you can actually make them worse or worse off. So what are some of the steps or skill sets people need to artfully get through some of these difficult situations?
I love this question. Firstly, let's talk about a couple of ways you can blow it. Right? Here's how to create a train wreck. Firstly, don't have an intention. Don't be clear on what your intention is. Just go in. Secondly, don't ask permission to have the conversation. Don't set any kind of context. Also, you should blame the person if you want to screw this up. Have it be in your mind that they did something wrong, and tell them what they did wrong. Tell them about their world. Tell them about their experience instead of just talking about your own experience. These are some good ways to blow it. Now, here's the 4-step blueprint, and you guys can find this on the website. You can download it. The first step is to ask permission. This is where you get to enroll them. Like, hey, I've got, there's been something on my mind. It's been bugging me for a bit. I wonder if you have a couple of minutes to talk about it. I think it'll help me clear the air, or at least for myself, and we could have a better working relationship, for example. Or in a social situation, I think there's something that's been keeping me a little distant from you, and I'd like to feel closer to you. Can I share something and see if that kind of clears the air for me? Right? So you're getting permission and buy-in. Now, if they say yes, 2 things happen. One, they know what's coming. So they've got context for this. They're not going to be blindsided. And 2, I've forgotten 2. There's another big benefit out of that, just right out of my head. So you're getting buy-in. The second step, share 1 hope and 1 fear. So my hope in having this conversation is that I'm going to feel more at peace. It might be all about you. Ideally, if you can have a hope that includes them, that's better, and that we'll have a better working relationship, or that our marriage will be deeper and stronger. Right? Something that they can get on board with. My fear. Now, there's always a fear. If there wasn't a fear, this would not be called a tough conversation. You'd call it something else.
Right.
There's some kind of fear, or it might arise as a concern. My concern or fear is that you might get defensive, or that you might not really listen and hear me out fully, or that you'll think judge me as too sensitive, or that you'll fire me, right? Because I screwed up.
Yep.
Or that you'll think less of me, or whatever. This is amazing. When I called a bully from my school days, I called him 20 years after school.
Wow.
And I did not want to have this conversation. And my coach helped me work through it, and we worked out the hope. The hope was that I could finally let go of this, because it had been bothering me for 20 years. And I couldn't do it. And she said, why? And I said, well, this is what I'm afraid of. He's going to think I'm a dickhead. And she said, then share that.
Interesting.
And that gave me access to calling him. I called him and I said, I'm really afraid to have this call because I think you're going to think I'm a dickhead. And he got curious. He said, well, I'm listening. What have you got? How can I help? I said, wow.
Yep.
So step 2 is share one hope and one fear.
Yeah, it sort of softens it, right? It's kind of a softener or a preemptive strategy, or just like you say, you're getting permission and then you're just sort of being authentic up front and softening a bit of the context of the conversation, right?
It is preemptive. I hadn't thought of that, but it's true. By you saying, I'm worried you're going to get angry, that you might preempt it, and then they might not get angry. And that works with me. If someone says, I'm worried you're going to get angry, I kind of go into a still space. Like I go counterpoint, right? The other thing that it does when you share this is it's vulnerable.
Right.
And you're actually being relational. So you could call it a strategy, but I think it's more of I'm showing you my underbelly here to be relational. Now, step 3 is to share whatever you've got. And the tip here, the pro tip, is to try and own your experience and use I statements. If you say, you made me so mad in that meeting, whoa.
Right.
Firstly, no one can ever make you anything. You're disowning your experience. You're saying they're the author of your experience. You're not taking responsibility for it. You want something like, when you did X, I felt Y.
Right.
Or when you did X, this seemed to happen. See, I'm not claiming a universal truth, but from my point of view, this seemed to happen. So you share your experience and get it out. And another pro tip, include a request in here. Don't just do a complaint or a vent or a dump. If there's something that could shift this, or something they could do that would help you or them or the world, this is the time for your request. And I have a request. It's a great word. People don't use it enough. I got this from Landmark. It's a request. They can say yes or no or counteroffer. I have a request that when you give me feedback on my work, you start with 2 positive things that you like about it, so I can feel more confident, and then tell me what you'd like to change.
Right. Right. So you're keeping the safety in the conversation a bit. Like at the moment we start saying, well, you made me feel this, or you did this, or you did that, people are going to feel attacked, right? And then the safety of the whole relationship goes out the window, and it becomes more of a me versus them situation versus us coming to some intentional predetermined goal or something of the conversation.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And it's arguable. When you use I statements, it's inarguable. What a great thing to learn. This is one of the things I teach my clients and the prison inmates, how to speak so that it cannot be argued. I felt, my experience was this. It seemed to me this. Right. That cannot be argued. So you're just going to get into you're going to hit less buttons if you speak to your experience. And also notice in everything I've said so far, I'm not blaming them for anything. Even if it's BO, when I'm around you, I'm noticing some BO, and I think it's you. I could be wrong. I think it's you, and it's kind of hard to be around you. Hard for me. That's very important. I can't say it's hard to be around you because now I'm speaking for other people. It's hard for me to be around you. And I wonder, can we talk about it? Because I want to be around you and be able to work with you,
Right.
or have children with you, or whatever it is. But can we talk about, here's another great way, going back to step one, here's another great way to start a tough conversation. I did this at Yannick's summer camp I was at recently. I said, are you open to a potentially awkward conversation that might take about 5 minutes? I think that's a great way to start it. You know, people get curious and they know what's coming. They know, all right, it could be awkward. All right, so that's step 3. And then step 4, which so many people miss, you've got to stick around and check for impact. You want to fight, like, this is where you get to be curious about their world. This is not just you spouting out your point of view and then walking away. You want to be relational. So a great question is something like, thanks for hearing me out. I really appreciate that. If nothing else, I get value out of just being heard. And now I'm curious, how is it for you to hear all that? How does that land? What are your ideas about this? They might have a different answer, a different idea, or they might want to share their position. This is where you really get to listen and shut up.
Right.
Those are the 4 steps, 4-step blueprint.
I like it. Thanks for walking us through that. That's some very good stuff there on, you know, getting permission, maintaining the conversation and the safety through I statements, and not just attacking people, you, that kind of thing, and then checking for impact. You know,
and sharing the hope and the fear.
And the hope and the fear. I like that. Yeah. And then afterwards, like, so what, and then we'll segue here in a second, because I'd like to get kind of your thoughts on where you're moving forward here with this. But so what happens afterwards? Like, let's say that you have the conversation, and they're like, yeah, thank you for doing this. Thank you for not attacking me. You know, it goes well. You know, what happens after that? I mean, do you check in on that same thing? What if they don't change? What if they, you know, do you have to revisit the conversation? Do you ever run into that as an issue?
Well, let's talk about that, and then let's talk about if it's a train wreck. So they may not change. When I have a tough conversation, I'm having it for me. I'm having it because I want to express myself. Yes, I'd like to influence the world. I'm an influencer, but I can't control the world. So I'm doing it for me, and I might make a request. But it's up to them if they decide. If my boss doesn't choose to let's go back to the feedback. My boss decides not to give me positive feedback first, then I might take it on myself to remind my boss and say, hey, remember when we talked about the positive feedback? I think this would be a good time to do it. Would you be up for practicing it now? That's on me.
Yep. To
remind the person. And if it's a boundary conversation, I might have to set my boundary 5 or 6 times. Hey, it's not okay with me when you're late. Oh, God, I got to add that. I'm writing this down.
That's a good one, yeah.
To the top 10, yeah. Big pet peeve for me. When you're late, I feel disrespected. Now that's on me, all right? I get it. This is my feelings. I feel disrespected, and my request is that you be on time. And if being on time is hard for you, that you aim for 10 minutes early, whatever it takes. That's my request. It'll feel really great for me. What do you say? And then, maybe they don't do it. Now, if they are on time, I'm going to praise them like crazy. Thank you. I noticed that you're on time. In fact, you were earlier than me, and that feels really good to me. I feel like we're raring to go. Thank you. Always catch people doing stuff right. And then if they don't do it, hopefully they'll acknowledge it and say, hey, I notice I'm late. I'm sorry. I commit to being on time. That's what I want to hear. I'm late. I'm sorry. I commit to being on time. And if they don't, I might bring it up again. I just did an interview with someone for a job position. I was interviewing them. She was like 5 minutes late joining the Zoom call and didn't acknowledge it. She's just like, hi, how are you?
Yeah, not a good start.
So I had the bit awkward conversation. I had a tough conversation with her. Say, hey, I'm curious about that. I don't know if that's ever happened in the last 400 calls I've had. If someone's late, 5 minutes late, they at least usually acknowledge it. So what's that about? Let's talk about it. And we had a conversation and she committed to being on time. And that led to a conversation about work ethic. And I said, if you're going to be late on delivering something to me, I want to know about it before you're late.
Yep.
So perhaps that answers, what happens after the conversation. Often it's just for me to clear the air. Maybe nothing changes. Maybe I just feel a little closer to the person, and maybe I follow up with whatever it was. But what if it's a train wreck?
Right.
What if they get defensive and they get mad at you, and now they're really unhappy that you brought it up? Does that mean that you shouldn't have had the conversation?
No, I would think not, but
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I'm working with a therapist right now, and he said this term I've never heard. He said, rupture and heal. Rupture and heal. So you might need to rupture that wound initially and bring it out. And maybe that person's got some charge and stuff. They want to bring a tough conversation. So then you get a chance to practice listening and hear it all until they might be ready to hear your side of it. But
and I imagine, go ahead, sorry.
I would rather we do this in the world than let things fester and not find out and just wonder, what if? Let's get related. And then maybe we need a second conversation. Maybe we need a third one. Maybe we find out that we shouldn't be working together.
True.
Let's find that out now instead of 2 years from now.
Cool. Well, let's segue then into, so I appreciate you walking us through the definition of the terms, the methodologies, the framework for creating and managing, artfully managing these tough conversations with staff or with partners or relationships. I think that gives everybody a great framework and good context to take from this interview. So moving forward in your own life, David, like what kind of impact are you looking to make moving forward with your coaching programs, with this Tough Conversations brand that you're now pouring yourself into? Where do you see, what's the vision? What do you see this becoming?
Thank you. I'm very excited. I believe that Tough Conversations are our doorway to growth, success, and connection, both in business and in life. And I think that, I'm concerned with like how much I used to bury them. And I don't want corporations and teams to bury them in particular, because it leads to people being disengaged and ultimately quitting. Or even worse, they stick around and actively sabotage results. So it hurts productivity. And my vision is that every team and company has a just-in-time coach that's available. And this is a new service that I've just launched where I am the just-in-time coach for that team or company. And whenever someone has a problem with somebody, they book the next available session with me, and we turn that into a conversation opportunity. Nice. Help them see how they can be a leader in their own life, whether they're a manager, a CEO, or whether they're an individual contributor or an assistant level, how they can be cause in their own life in turning this into a conversation. And then we'll role play the conversation. I'll actually be them, and I'll have the conversation from their point of view so they can see how someone else might have it and get all these ideas and take a bunch of notes. And then off they go empowered, and they have the conversation with some confidence and vulnerability and skill.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that will transform teams and companies and ultimately the world. And that's my grand mission.
Yeah. So you're looking at like certifying other coaches, creating a training branch off of this new brand and all those kind of things?
I think that's inevitable.
Yeah.
Right now it's not my focus, but right. It's not going to be long before I can't do it. If I get one team of 100 people and I'm the on-call coach and they start really using this, I've already got some coaches lined up.
Got it.
To come in and do this. I want every company to have this available. Like I want it to be a household thing that they're like, oh, who's your just-in-time Tough Conversations coach? We don't have one. What? Why not?
Are you crazy?
Yeah. I got a board meeting. I book a session with my coach before I go into the board meeting so I can have this tough conversation with the board. To me, it's a no-brainer, and I'm very excited about this.
Sounds like it. That sounds like a great service. So Well, David, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your past, your journey, your focus on improving tough conversations around the world, and then where you would like to take this thing. As we wrap things up, are there any final words you'd like to leave people with, and then where can people find out more about you?
Thanks. Well, I think those were good as final words. I feel very excited and inspired by this work with Conversations as the doorway. Where they can find me, if you have a high-performing team, or you're a high-performing leader, executive or entrepreneur, and you would like to master tough conversations, particularly to increase engagement and productivity, then go to playforreal.life and set up a call with me so we can discuss just-in-time tough conversations coaching for your team or for you. You can also subscribe to my podcast and download the 4-step blueprint for tough conversations. And there's also a great life assessment there. So playforreal.life. Playforreal.life.
Playforreal.life. We'll link that up for sure. And thank you for mentioning that for people listening on audio. And so hope everybody enjoyed this conversation with David Wood. Go ahead and check out playforreal.life to learn more about David and his journey. And we'll have all your social links and all that kind of stuff on the show notes page. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, they can do so. So thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me today, David. And we all appreciate it. So hope everyone enjoyed that conversation, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.